Welcome to the MWA podcast. I'm Kyle and I'm here with my co-host Sean and Brian. Today we're excited to welcome Ron Guritzky, better known as Obst Woodworker, to the show. Ron is a hobbyist woodworker and chairmaker who makes some wonderful furniture and doesn't mind sharing his mistakes along the way. Ron works out of the shop in South Florida and is also a fellow anesthesiologist, so him and Brian have something in common.
Best kind.
A team.
Yeah, I feel outnumbered.
Yeah. So welcome to the show, Ron.
Thank you.
Yes. I was telling before we started that at least I got someone on the show finally that can, commiserate with me when these hurricanes start, getting close. So that's right. How far from the water are you, Ron?
Probably 10 miles. I mean, we're inland, so
Okay.
we're closer to the Everglades.
Okay.
Some of the other communities around here will flood when they get heavy rain because they don't get it pumped out fast enough. But we seem to stay fairly dry.
Yeah, we got some communities around here that are the same way. So yeah, I understand that. As I always say, if I flood, everyone's flooding. Well, believe it or not, guys, we have a sponsorship. So let me get into our sponsorship with Haystack. Mountain School of Crafts is a sponsor of this episode. Haystack connects people through craft. From a stunning coastal main campus, Haystack provides time and space to engage with materials, develop new ideas, and work in a creative and supportive community. From June through August, Haystack offers a 1- and 2-week studio workshops to participants of all skill levels taught by professional artists from the U.S. and abroad, as well as a 2-week open studio residency program. For 2025, Haystack offers Square One, a new 4-day session format expressly created for beginners. Registration is now open for the 2025 summer season. Fellowships are also available. Wood workshop topics range from chair making and sculpting narratives to mechanical movements and sculptural mirror frames. The fellowship application deadline is January 17th. The general workshop application deadline is January 31st, and the open studio residency application deadline is March 14th. For workshop descriptions and to register, visit haystack-mtm.org. That's haystack-mtm.org. We will have a link in the show notes. And once again, we want to thank Haystack for sponsoring this episode. All righty, well, let's move on to what's in the shop. So, Sean, what are you working on?
This is post-Christmas, post-New Year, so let me just say Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you had a good holiday season. And one thing I got, and I will say I got this myself, because I didn't want to explain it to my wife that I wanted it, was one of these. I don't know if anyone's done any of these Lee Valley kind of DIY kits that they make. Like there's a spoon carving set. I got a Danish cord stool kit from them. I didn't really read up on it. I saw it was like 90 some bucks. I was like, oh, cool. I need to do something. This is going to be like, very DIY. Yeah. It comes in the nicest box I could expect this to come in, paper wrapped with a sticker closing it inside, everything portioned out exactly. I got 3 sheets of different grades of sandpaper, a bottle of glue, beeswax finish, everything with this, and Danish cord and the hook nails you need for them and everything. And so I've just got into laying it out because I got to drill a bunch of 16-inch holes for those hooks. Assembly should go really quickly, and then I look forward to messing up, weaving the cord. I have to say hats off to Lee Valley. Not that they ever produce anything that's terrible. But this little stool kit I got in a box is very nice. Very cool. Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I've always wanted to do is the Danish cord thing. And I saw that stool kit and went, that's a cool idea.
I'll let you know, hopefully by the time next time we record, I might have it done. And I'll tell you my trials and tribulations.
Do you think that has instructions that like a brand new woodworker could tackle it? Like, does it come with that level of detail?
I could pull up the PDF. With the kit, you scan a thing and you go to a specific website that has a video that walks you through not building it, but the drilling, putting the hook nails in, and then the steps of the weaving.
Gotcha.
In pretty good detail. It's only like a 15-minute video though, and it's definitely edited down quite a bit. It's not showing you the whole process. It doesn't talk through, but then reading through the instructions, which I have not completely read through, I think it is very do this, do this, do this. You know, you're going to do this. You know, it's step by step. Actually, let me just open it. Hold on, because it's let me see. For a project like this, it is how many pages long? That many pages long. But it goes into, let me get above, even like before you even start. It's like it wants you to pre-finish. You do all these things. It's only what, 8 pieces of square cut lumber to size. It's all floating tenon, you know, putting to, you know, assembly. And so, you know, notes and tips and exploded views along the way. I mean, it's really good. And all told, I just found it. It's like 23 pages long of PDF instruction. And so that might seem pretty quick, but the stool is really, I mean, you can unbox it and kind of tell how it goes together. There's holes in the right places. You know, everything is, you know, 4S, perfectly square sanded. So you're really just touching it up, softening edges, and putting this thing together.
So it's like a good, I hate to use the term gateway drug, but like if you think your significant others always thought about building something, this might be a good way to get their fingers wet, you know.
Yeah. And I this is a, you know, might be usable in the house, might not. I don't know if everybody will agree to it, but we lack seating in the living room at times, and it's a smaller frame. I think it's only, does it have dimensions on this? It's something like 16 to 17 inches by 10 inches. It's a rectangle top.
Gotcha.
And so it's a single butt seat, you know, and it only stands, you know, I think 14 inches off the ground, so it's a little shorter stool, but it's, I think, yeah, I mean, it's kind of how I'm seeing it. It's kind of a gateway. I've made a stool in my day, and it took me CAD drawings and laying out, you know, that three stringered 3-legged stool that I made. That's fine and good. It's not, doesn't look great to me, and I made it out of shit pine. You know, this will be a somewhat upgrade and step in maybe a different direction. So yeah, I think it would be a good kind of thing. And the other kits they have, like I mentioned, spoon carving, and I think there's another one. I would expect the same from. I didn't want to dive into spoon carving, but I think it comes with like a hook knife and a glove to protect yourselves and everything. I mean, it is a complete set is what they're offering in these DIY kind of things.
Yeah, because I think they're giving you on some of those I've seen, they're giving you all the tools and chisels and
I mean, this thing even
need.
this even came with a little a spring clamp, like a little, you know, black plastic, you know, spring clamp. Just, oh hey, when you're doing it, you might need to hold something in place. Click. It came with one.
Yeah.
Like I have a bunch of them, but you know, like, hey, it's great to have. So yeah, I mean, if you could get this literally, and I think all you need is a drill and a hammer.
The other thing about it is, of course, if you wanted to get into seat weaving and you've never even looked at it, if you know the woodworking already, it might be a good place to start.
Yeah, you know what? And that's kind of where I am. I'm comfortable with the woodworking. I was kind of not upset. The floating tenons that they have were obviously machined, and they all are sharp on the top and bottom in the tallest dimension as it's used. So I have to sand each one of them down to fit the routed holes because they don't go in.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of annoying, but hey, they gave me sandpaper, you know, so it's fine. You know, so it'll be like a 1x1 joint by joint test fit, you know, like, okay, put that in there, you know, make sure it goes.
Could you use a little block plane just to knock it down?
I thought about that, except they're only about an inch long. And
well,
like,
put your block plane in a vise and just
run
it across.
Okay, good thought. Hadn't thought of that.
These are domino tips because dominoes don't fit that well in there.
Is that okay? So I didn't know that. I always thought dominoes were like a nice oval shape, you know, right out, and they could just go right in.
Well, they can if you want to hammer the hell out of them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. I'm not,
but the problem is if you're doing dry fit, I mean, I got a whole little jar of dry fit dominoes.
Oh, okay.
Sanded down and stuff, so you can.
They're ready to go.
Throw them in the microwave. That's what I do.
Yeah, you can do that too.
Yeah,
shrink them out a little bit.
Yeah, just shrink them. Yeah. Just take the humidity out of them. They shrink temporarily. I mean,
well, see, now that they're in the basement, maybe they're going to relax a little bit. You know, it's pretty dry and cool down here.
Yeah, I mean, where Kyle and Ron live, you got about 5 minutes before that domino swells back up. But
yeah, work quickly. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, among other things, I got a lot of great holiday, you know, all across, and good times. Brian, how about you?
It's been a while since I've been on the show. I got so much stuff going on. let's see, where do I start? I was telling the guys before the show, we had a pretty nasty illness rip through the house. I was out at least a week. And my poor youngest daughter had, I think, 3 different illnesses, like back to back to back. So it's that was tough for a bit for the house. Poor wife thought she escaped it and then started throwing up everywhere on Christmas Eve. So, yeah, but we're all better. And I was able to drop off some of the Nutcracker items. If you recall, some time ago, I got commissioned to make a sled. That did not end up happening for a variety of reasons. Probably going to reapproach that for next year. But I had to make a bench, like a small bench for 2 people to sit on the throne. And that turned out okay. I think it needs a better paint job. But the cannon. So I think that was on my feed. You know, for those who don't know, I made, this is cannon version 2. I made basically a full-size Revolutionary War cannon first time. And then we kind of, since the Nutcracker is like the land of the sweets, so we decided to make it a little more toy-like in version 2. So I had a brand new barrel. We tried to get to shoot CO2 last year. It did not work. I spent probably the better part of 30 hours this year figuring out why it didn't work. Long story short is CO2 to come out like a big cloud that lasts for about, half a second to a second needs extremely high pressure. It's got to move very, very fast. The regulator that was in there for safety reasons slowed it down so much that cloud was dissipating within the barrel and never even got out of the barrel as a cloud.
Wow.
So I went to a homebrew place and I talked with those guys for like 45 minutes and we guys like, get the regulator out of there. So I did that. I had to get a high pressure, basically an industrial solenoid that's DC powered. And dang it, that thing worked.
It's impressive. It's impressive.
Yeah, that's cool. And no risk of any explosions.
No, what
regulator.
Because now it's a high pressure system, so it's 860 some odd psi. So I fired that thing off probably 30 times in my wood shop, and I'm glad it did because it blew some stuff out of the barrel, like out of the metal pipe, blew the paint out of the pipe, basically.
Oh wow! Okay.
So got all the debris, cleaned the breach, so to speak. And then I had some leaks. So I worked, I put a thing on Facebook, and a couple guys that I know that work in the industrial side, they told me, use this for thread seal in addition to the yellow tape, and it worked. And I minimized the amount of fittings as much as possible, and it was a nice, clean look. Looked great. I brought it up on a Thursday night, dropped it off, grabbed the sound and production engineer. I said, "This is how you shoot it. It's basically, you turn one switch, it arms everything, and then it's got a remote because it has an LED fuse on it. So when you push that LED button, it looks like a fuse on top of the cannon. And then there's another button you push and that lights up the LEDs in the barrel and lets the CO2 out. And you can fire it from almost 100 feet away. So it's really nice. So the sound guy fixes, does this. This looks great. Thanks. I tell him, just all you have to do is open that tank about a third of a turn. That's all it needs. So
wait, I know where this story's going.
yeah, kind of do. So I leave because I had to take my other daughter to sports practice, right? So and my wife is now the ballet costume lead for that company, so she had to stay there. So she sent me a video of them firing this off on stage. It's just during tech rehearsal, so they're not dressed up yet, but everybody's out there. And the 2 soldier dancers, they're usually the older girls that have been around for a while. They're on either side of the cannon. The Nutcracker guy is right next to it, and the ballet director was the one who brought it out since the Drosselmeyer character wasn't there. This thing goes off, and the CO2 cloud goes out of the frame, which is pretty far to the right. So that told me he must have opened that tank at least a full turn, if not more. And then my wife says to me, well, I could see in the video that the 2 soldier dancers on either side, that both kind of lean away and basically mouth, "Holy shit." And we found out that one of the mice cried because it's loud and everything. And I'm like, oh, and then I look over and the ballet director's smiling ear to ear. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. So I'm like, I did my thing. I mean, because I upped the outage of the LEDs at least 10x. So much that if you left that thing on for about, 3 minutes, the can would probably set on fire because there's no heat sink and it's a wooden barrel.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's on for a second and a half at the absolute most. There's no danger of that. But and then I get a text Saturday. It says it's broken, and I'm in Pittsburgh at this point, 300 miles away. I'm like, what do you mean it's broken? So at some point, they blew through the one tank I had. They put the second tank in, and then something happened. They said the solenoid went out, which I doubt, because that thing is meant to do heavy duty cycling. So I was a little upset about that. My wife told me that they didn't want to tell me because they knew I'd be pissed. So this summer I got to go grab it and figure out what they did to it. But yeah, it's and then I went to a big, like really big ballet Nutcracker production in Pittsburgh, and they bring their cannon out. I'm like, oh, look at that. That thing's a joke. And it's like shot a little bit of smoke, just.
There you go.
And I'm like, and then my
say, hey, you want to see some real work? Come down to our theater.
Yeah. And then my daughter says, well, they've been doing this version for 20 some odd years. In 2026, they're doing a whole different Nutcracker. And she goes, they might contact you to make them again.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but that was cool. I'm glad that's out of my shop, because my shop looked like the maintenance department of the Land of the Sweets for quite some time. And there's, I don't know, there's actually, when I got this microphone, there's glitter on it from my wife. So there's just thread and glitter everywhere. And I'm glad, that's over and we're on to different things here. But yeah, that's my life.
Well, I must say it was impressive. I showed everybody that cannon going off. Now, my wife really didn't like it, but all my guy friends were like, yeah, that is cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty darn cool.
I had 3 different people ask me if that was fire coming.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, A, we don't have the insurance for that. And B, we don't have that many mice, so I'm
Can't
like,
keep replacing them for too
yeah,
long.
it's like the old Mr. Billcart show, but yeah, I'm glad how that turned out. It's technologically advanced, but extremely simple. Like, it's got very few parts in it. It's everything's soldered, and there's no way this thing's going to fall apart. So yeah, that's cool. Kyle, how about you?
Not much, I guess. I guess the big thing I talked about on our last episode was this outfeed table I actually found right before we started recording. Well, I ended up buying something similar but different. I decided not to go with the one on casters, but I got this outfeed table from Sam's Club, believe it or not. They carry this company out there called, I should have wrote it down. Anyway, I'll put a link in the show notes to it, but you can buy it at various places. It just, Sam's Club seems to carry it at the best price, but it's a metal table, very heavily reinforced metal legs and braces and stuff like that. And then it's got a laminated wood top, and everything screwed together. It was around, I don't know, $170, $200, something like that. And, it took about an hour to put together, if that. And it's really nicely put together. It's adjustable as far as the height, so you can, vary the height. And, the laminated top, it's probably got, I don't know, a millimeter of finish on it. think bar top type finish, so it's not going anywhere. Now, is it flat? No, it's not flat. It's probably a 30-second out, probably at the highest point, maybe a heavy 30-second out. But for what I'm using it for an outfeed table or a little mini assembly table or packing table, which I've been using it for, it's perfectly fine. It works fine. It doesn't have to be, there's very few things in the shop that have to be that flat. And if I need something that flat, my bench is flat. Actually, my bench is flatter than my table saw. So go figure. LVL is good for that, by the way. But so this outfeed table is fantastic. I'm really happy for it. I need to build a little cabinet underneath to, do some storage so I can put a shelf and stuff like that. So I'll be doing that in the next few months, whenever I get a break so I can get to it. But yeah, it's really good. I was able to adjust it to where it was just slightly taller than my table saw. By slightly taller, I mean probably 32nd or something like that. It was just barely hitting. So I was like, well, how can I adjust this? And the way my saw stop is, it has the pneumatic lift, which lifts up the saw. So I basically just put a thin piece. I had what I use for templates and stuff is I think it's like, I don't know, 16th or inch MDF or something like that I use for templates. You can get that stuff at Home Depot. Usually it's got like a whiteboard thing to it, on one side of it. And so I just put a piece of that under the saw and lowered the saw back down just to raise the saw up.
Nice.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you had to cut cracks in for like a miter sled to go through.
Yeah, the way this sits off the top, I don't think I'm going to need to. I can push my my table saw sled and my miter saw all the way through to where it's past the highest point of the blade. So yeah, I don't think I'll need to, but if I have to, yeah, that'd be easy enough to do too. So anyway,
Very
but
cool.
yeah, we'll see how it looks. I got a bunch of comments, but a bunch of people like, can you tell me where you got that at? So we'll see. But yeah, so far so good. The other thing is orders. In the Christmas season, so I've gotten a bunch of orders, and then they keep piling up. So I know who got money for Christmas. So so that's been going well. And I'm also doing an order for custom drill bits. Now, by the time this posts, I probably already ordered them. But if any of these interest you, just reach out to me, and the next time I order drill bits, I can put you on the list. But I'm ordering some more 1-inch.
I saw that thing was
Triton bit.
Massive.
It's a massive bit. Yeah. That's the one that Shay Alexander bought for me. And I go, I haven't made one this big, but let's go for it. And I got it in and I tried it out because I want to make sure the thing performs well. Yeah, it worked pretty well. Now, you got to keep your drill at 500 RPM. It's not going to be cutting the fastest, but it's
torquing. Right.
Yeah.
Right around.
Yeah.
Like a postal digger. Just
exactly. Yeah, but yeah, it made a nice hole, and so I was that's one thing about my drill bits. If you order drill bits from me, they've already been tested. So I do test every drill bit before it's sold, just to make sure that it performs up to my expectations. So so once that came, I had a bunch of people reach out to me, so I'm making another round of 1-inch Triton drill bits. So
awesome.
They work well. They're not cheap, but they work well. But anyway, that's about it. So, Ron, what have you been working on in your shop?
Well, right before Christmas, I finished up a couple of projects. I was doing a toy chest for my grandson, daughter-in-law, son, and I was building a little stool base for an ottoman. So I started up another chair. I had seen this stool on Instagram, I think, although I don't really remember, that had a 2-board seat with a space between them. I think it was a Chinese or Japanese woodworker who posted it. So I backed up to, the Amana benches, Jamil Abraham.
Yep.
So I had taken a class with him, and then I built a chair based on that, just shorter and reproportioned it a little bit. So I'm building a chair with a split bench, where a split seat, and the seat slopes down towards the center, towards the split.
Okay. Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And then I couldn't figure out what to do with the back, and I was flipping through some stuff, and I saw a torii gate, which is the gates in front of Japanese shrines with the 2 posts on the top and the 2 vertical columns. And so I'm doing a riff on that. I may be mixing cultural icons between the chairs and the back and the seat and everything, but that's today I was I cut the mortises and tenons for the posts for the back splats. So tomorrow or next time I get in the shop, I'll start working on mounting the rail across the top.
Cool.
Very
cool. Yeah. I've seen some stools like that with that. I like that little seat configuration where it has a split down the middle and it slopes down. There was somebody years ago that made a bench similar to that I think it was in fine woodworking, but boy, that has to be at least 10 years ago, if not longer. But but I always remember that. I go, that's cool. I should go back. That looks like something that would be interesting to build.
One of the things I like about it is that you don't have to worry about saddling a seat or anything else. Yeah. It's kind of self-saddling, and it only falls off. I think I did 3/8 of an inch to the center, so it's not even that deep.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and yours is going to be a little different than the one because the one I saw was a true bench. It didn't have a back to it or anything like that. It was just a bench. But yeah, that's pretty cool. pretty cool. I see you posted some of the stuff on Instagram recently, at least some of your sketches and things.
Yeah. And every day I'm in the shop, I try to post at least 1 or 2 pictures or a video or something. Usually I try and include what's not right.
Exactly.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I screw up a lot, like a whole lot. And I'm a big fan of not doing Instagram pretty. Like my dovetails are still absolute crap. I'll be the first to admit that. So you're never gonna see beautiful stuff. And I snap things still, and terrible blowout from the plane. And so I appreciate people who are willing to show the not so sexy side of woodworking.
Because otherwise everyone starts feeling inadequate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens to everybody. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's not a project I've done where there's not something that I had to, make some corrective action to, whether that's, splice in another piece of wood or fill something or whatever the case may be. Yep. So yeah. So that's good. So how did you settle on your moniker there as Obst Woodworker?
I screw up all the time.
It just fits.
Just fits.
Several years, well, it's longer than that now. Apparently my great-grandfather, my father's grandfather, was a furniture maker.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of sad because my father tells me that after he died, there were all these barrels of his tools in the attic, and my grandmother paid someone to haul them away.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
So he said he had 1 tool left, which was, I think, like a 1/16 of an inch chisel. It was a very narrow chisel.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I had to be using it. I didn't want to just put it somewhere and not use it. And so I was using it when I would make a mortise, a blind mortise. I would use it in the bottom to kind of loosen up the stuff and kind of flick the flakes out.
Mm-hmm.
And it spaghettied. It broke in 2 places into 3 pieces.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
And it was like, yeah, oops.
yeah.
So I keep it in my chest and I look at it now and again and go, yeah, we all screw up.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Wow. That's real similar to my story. My grandfather was he did a whole bunch of different things, but yeah, he did a lot of furniture making and stuff like that. And he had tools, and my great aunt ended up selling all the tools. Like, I don't know, probably like 5 years before I got into woodworking. So it's like, when I found out about that, it's like, oh, darn it. But my uncle had one of his chisels, his favorite chisel that he used for everything. So I do have that. And it's a wide chisel. It's probably, I want to say like 7/8 inch wide, something like that. But it is very, very short. You can tell this thing was used. It's almost down to the, where it narrows down before it gets to the handle.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
It's been sharpened within an inch of its life.
Exactly.
Butt chisel.
Yeah. Basically, it's a butt chisel now. Yeah. Basically, it's a butt chisel, and the handle it looks like petrified wood. I don't know. It's probably just got all kinds of finish and stuff on it, in the back of the handle's all mushroomed and stuff. So it's seen some use. So I did, sharpen it up. It is usable. I don't use it that much, but I've had some occasions where I needed a butt chisel and I grabbed it. So not too bad. It's nice to have something little like that. But so Ron, so tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up and how did you get into woodworking?
Well, I grew up in suburban Maryland, Montgomery County, just outside Washington, D.C.
Okay.
My father was a general contractor, as was my grandfather, my uncle, and my godfather. And most of what they did was small commercial, like strip centers and apartment buildings and garden apartments and stuff. But eventually my father went out on his own and was building houses, and I started working for him at like age 7.
Mm-hmm.
So, and my first job, when nails came in 50-pound boxes and the carpenters would grab a handful to throw in their apron and, a third of them would fall back on the ground. My job at 7 years old was to sort the nails by size and put them back at the box. So, and then I graduated to my first tool, which was a broom. And I would go through and start sweeping up the houses and sweep up the drywall dust and, no air conditioning, 90-degree Washington, D.C. summers. And I would get home and I'd have an inch of plaster on my skin and get in a shower with a scrub brush and scrub it all off. But eventually I got a hammer and started, helping the carpenters with the rough framing and everything. And then when I was in graduate school, I came home one summer and my father said he was tired of listening to my mom bitch that everyone got an addition but her. So he handed me a set of plans, permits, and a list of his subs and said, have it done by the time you get back to school. So we were dry. The plumbing and electrical was in, the drywall was up, and, it was pretty close. So, and then I didn't really do anything for years. I mean, I was handy around the house. If something needed doing, I would do it. And then after I finished residency, my ex-wife got into spinning wool, like hand spinning with a drop spindle, which is basically just like a bobbin on a stick that spins. And she said, you should make me some drop spindles. So I bought a 10-inch bandsaw and I bought a small lathe and I bought a small drill press, and I started doing that. And then I also did some boxes and some other stuff along the way. And then when we moved to Florida, I got a table saw and I was building stuff with that. My stepdaughter asked me for a table and she wanted the two-sided drop leaf tables that when both sides are down, the thing's like 15, 18 inches wide or whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I built that and I did that on a bandsaw. And it got to the point where I had to cut the mortises, and it was like, all right. And it took me about 2 weeks to make the decision, but it's like, all right, do I go out and buy a mortiser? Do I rig up something and do it with a router? And then in the bottom of my chest was a mortising chisel. So I said, I'll do that. And from that point on, it was more and more hand tools, fewer power tools. And right now my table saw sits in the back of my shop behind a shelf and hasn't been pulled out in 2 years.
Wow.
Interesting. So that was your basic journey into hand tool woodworking. So what power tools do you have? Do you have like a planer joiner or something like that?
Right now, what I have and doesn't get used is I have the table saw in the back corner. I have I still have the small lathe. I have the drill press. None of that gets used. I gave away the planer joiner to a guy who was doing some work in my house, and he looked like he could use it. And then I have a probably 50-year-old 14-inch bandsaw, and that's right now the only power tool that I routinely use. I kind of, I've read that in 200 years ago, when a furniture maker went to the sawmill, he could get many more options of thicknesses of wood and everything. That, it wasn't just 4/4, 5/4, 8/4, 12/4. You could say, I need 3/4, whatever. So I kind of console myself that that's my sawmill. So I use it to cut stuff down when I have to do long lengths of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so do you four-square everything yourself then?
Hand plane.
Yep. Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Scrub plane, joiner plane, and then finish plane.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
Interesting.
part of the reason I don't build anything huge.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say that
Yeah.
keeps the size in check. You're not gonna build a big Victorian cabinet doing that.
No, I mean, what I end up doing, a lot of stuff that I do is frame and panel. So I, like if I build a chest or something. So the rails and the stiles are easy enough to four-square. They're reasonably short.
Mm-hmm.
And then the panels, I just lay on the bench and I don't have to four-square it. I only have to have one pretty side.
Yeah. Well, so do you rive any of this stuff? I don't know what your wood selection is there in South Florida. Probably like mine, which is next to none as far as greenwood goes.
When I went to Amana for the handworks, thank you.
Yeah.
I drove. I like driving distances, but B, when I drove back, I had a car full of wood because to get wood in South Florida, I can get it, but as much as the wood, if I get it shipped in, the transportation, the shipping is as much as the cost of the wood.
Right.
And if I get it from someone here, I still have to pay for the shipping, so it's about the same.
Mm-hmm.
So I've used a lot of Southern Yellow Pine because I can get that at the home center.
Yep. Yeah, I do the same thing. Yeah.
I have I used to have a guy who worked for a lumber company that supplied shops in the area, and he was the husband of someone I work with. So when I needed some cherry or something, I would tell him, and he would tack it onto one of the orders, and then I would pay for it. And then the corporation found out he was doing it and told him to stop. So that was the end of that. So,
Darn it. Well, do you have are there any hardwood lumber dealers in that area, or?
There are. And,
Okay.
and as I said, it's expensive.
It's
I
expensive,
needed,
yeah.
what did I need the other day? I needed poplar for the toy chest I was building. And I wanted 4/4 poplar. And they didn't have 4/4 poplar. What they had was 4/4 poplar that had been S4S'd. So
Right.
I took that. I still went over it every surface with my finish plane because I wasn't happy with the S4S. And by the way, S4S, it wasn't necessarily square. I still had to joint everything when I was doing glue ups and everything. So, and it was expensive.
Yeah.
I think I probably in the future, I've got a reasonable supply of stuff right now that I've acquired between Handworks and other stuff that I've picked up along the way. But the next time I need lumber, I may drive up to Georgia, or who knows, maybe I'll drive up and say hi to Shay.
Yes. You should. Yeah. I'm sure he could hook you up.
Come up to Pennsylvania. We got wood all over the place up here.
That's true.
We got
Yeah.
we got white oak, poplar, walnut, cherry, cedar, whatever you need. We got you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Grows like trees.
God does.
That was so bad.
My name.
Hey, it was just laying there. It was just laying there. And
Easy
someone had to
pick.
pick it up.
It was a layup.
Yeah, it was.
It was.
Yeah.
We had a tree fall 2 neighbors away from me on New Year's Day, and we went over there to clean it up, me and a couple of guys. And my neighbor directly next to me goes, "Next up are those black walnuts. I hate those damn things." Those are just between our houses. They're not super mature, but we'll be dropping those probably in the spring.
There you go.
Well, you might be able to turn something from them if nothing
Yeah,
else.
yeah. I got some a girl I used to work with. She had a big one taken down, and she let me take. They're well dry now, but I have a good, like, they're short, unfortunately, but like 18-inch diameter, 2-foot tall log, and a one big old branch that's probably 10 inches through and about 8 feet long. It's twisty as hell, so I'm sure it's got all sorts of tension in it. But yeah, free lumber,
Yeah.
man.
Well, cool.
The only things I have choices down here, I can get live oak, which is horrible to work. Palm trees aren't real trees.
Yeah.
Then you have things like Royal Point Sienna and ficus trees and that kind of stuff. None of the ficus trees, when you go to split them, they all just split and they spiral down. It's all horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got luckily we do have a good hardwood lumber dealer in Houston that's really good. But besides that, yeah, it's kind of in the same boat here. You have to find out anything useful you can do with a palm tree, not for lack of looking, but anyway. Just basically
some
grass.
of the fire. Some of the hardwood dealers, Bell Forest comes to mind. They run some pretty good sales once in a while. I've bought some really crazy curly maple from them in the past. Like Black Friday in particular, it was if you ordered over a certain amount, it came with free shipping.
Yeah.
It was not as cheap as I would get it locally, but it was reasonable, I would say. So you just have to keep your eye open for sales.
Yeah. Well, I know, Ron, you do a lot of chair making, so I would definitely look into Shay because those chair kits he's got available are pretty cool. Yeah, pretty cool. Well, so Ron, so tell us, since you are the Obst woodworker, so tell us about some of your best saves or worst mistakes or whatever.
Well, it's been interesting because early on I would do something and I would stare at it. Well, first I would curse a lot. Then I would stare at it. Then I would spend a week or two trying to figure out how to fix it. And so when I made the table for my daughter and I was chopping the mortises, I put a piece of tape on the mortise chisel so that I would know how deep to chop. Tape slides.
Yes.
Jeez.
And so there, on more than one place, I came through the other side.
Oh,
But she She wanted a walnut top, and she wanted the legs white, and the legs in the frame whitewashed. So I learned how to take, very similar grain pieces of the southern yellow pine that I was using for the base, and I cleaned up the hole, and I glued it in there and planed over it. And by the time you painted it, you whitewashed it. It was still, if you look for it, you'll find it. But if you don't know it's there, you're going to miss it.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's stuff like that. That was probably about 5-6 years ago. At this point, I still curse when I screw up, but then I just move on. And it's things like, I'm trying to remember, on the chair I'm building now, I had bought a dovetail plane, and it was the first time I used it, and I didn't quite get the adjustment right for the depth stop. So all of my battens that are sliding dovetails sit just a little bit low. There's just a little bit of a gap when you look at them from the front.
Mm-hmm.
So when I glue this up and everything, I've got other pieces of similar grained southern yellow pine, and I'll just glue them in there and plane it smooth, and it's going to get painted anyway. So, that kind of thing.
That's cool. That's cool. So, dovetail plane. Tell us a little bit about that. That sounds interesting. I've never used one myself.
Neither had I.
Yeah.
So basically, what it's designed to do, it may be able to do more stuff. But I bought it. When you make like the Amana bench, you put battens through the bottom.
Right.
And these battens are actually dovetailed in. They're not just trapezoid shaped that go into the sides or go into the groove. So there's a flat part. The top of the batten is flat. It dovetails in from both sides. It goes back out flat again, and then comes down in a square across the bottom.
Okay.
I don't know if I'm describing that well or not. So you still need to saw and chisel out the receptacle side on the bottom of the seat.
Mm-hmm.
But this makes it very quick to cut the dovetails on the sides of the batten. And since a lot of my seat stock isn't really thick enough, I tend to use battens under my seat, and I like the look of the dovetail. So
yeah, cool. Yeah.
And basically it's almost like a molding plane, because you put it on the corner and you just start sliding it back and forth, and it cuts down and just leaves a dovetail as what's left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Since you're using battens a bunch, have you been following Chris Schwartz and his new book he's going to be coming out with? Or I don't know if it's going to be a book or a journal or something like that, but the chair from bullshit.
Yeah,
I saw that. Yeah.
Actually, he has just finished it. He sent it out for the artwork, because I follow him on Substack.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
and he just released a preliminary copy of the book.
Yeah, I downloaded it. I haven't had a chance to look at it myself, but it looks interesting.
Yeah.
When he was polling people, hey, what can we use for chair legs? I was thinking, I remember a few years ago I bought like hand drilling and some curtain rod. Big. I don't know. I think it's southern yellow pine. It could be something, but big round, like 1.5 inches in diameter and stuff like that. And I go, that would be pretty cool. But the only thing is those are finger jointed ever so often. So I'm not sure if you would have to, if you used one of those, if you'd have to cut it between the finger joints. I haven't measured to see how long these things are between finger joints, or if it probably wouldn't even matter. I would imagine if it can be a curtain rod with those finger joints, it can certainly be a chair leg with fingers, I would think.
I have a couple of hickory post hole digger handles that broke off that I couldn't throw away. So they're sitting in the back of my shop, and they'll get used one day for handles for legs or something. Something
like that. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Well, so tell us about some of your favorite projects that you've made.
I just finished up the toy chest.
Mm-hmm.
And every dovetail I've ever cut, this has the best dovetails. They still required sawdust and glue filler. They still required a couple of patches along the way, to fill in some of the gaps. But of everything I ever cut, they went together the smoothest. I took a class, not a year ago, last fall, in the spring, with Frank Straza at Kate's school. It's at Florida School of Woodwork.
Yes.
And I took it specifically because my dovetails and my joinery were sloppy. And I couldn't figure out, when you sit there and work in a shop by yourself, you sit there and say, well, maybe I'll try this. Maybe I'll try that. But you don't really know what you're doing, and you're hoping for the best. So my real goal was to get Frank to watch me do it and say, this is what you're screwing up. And he did. And my sawing is much better. I no longer hold a death grip on the handle, which kills your control. He showed me a couple of things that when you start getting off the line, how to just kind of nibble your way back onto the line. And,
he's fantastic.
He's amazing. And, I talked to him for 20 minutes at hand. He's incredibly personable too.
Yeah.
And so, and he just likes to talk about his stuff and talk with you about his stuff. So I built that chest, and it was built out of poplar, and everything seemed to work smoothly. I got in a groove because I'm hand joining the sides to get them to glue up, and all my jointing was like first pass, and everything glued and stayed glued. In the past, I've had issues where I join a board and I glue it up, and then I drop it and the glue line separates and it breaks back into two pieces.
Yeah.
And it's like, or I glue it up and it's got a nice little bow through it because it wasn't quite square. But everything squared, all the dovetails cut beautifully. I didn't quite know what to do for the bottom. So I ended up putting a toe kick on it, and I just glued the toe kick to the inside of the sides. And then I took my bottom slats, which were half lapped, and just set them on top of the toe kick boards inside the chest. And then I put just a piece of molding around on the inside to hold them down. And it worked brilliantly. I'm sure someone's done it at some point in the past because nothing's original.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of Anarchist Design Book. He has a bookcase in there. And I built that bookcase, and what you're describing to me sounds a little bit like the way the top of that bookcase is made, because it's got a batten that holds the backboards, which are shiplapped. And that sounds very similar, except yours is on the bottom, or on the inside, should I say, of the bottom, and instead of on the top. So it sounds familiar. Yeah.
I was a little concerned about gluing it, but then I figured it's long grain down the front and it's long grain down the sides. They should be, and there's like at least an inch of glue surface. So that should hold.
Yep. Yeah. Sometimes you get away with things. I built a Dutch tool chest. In fact, it's a mini Dutch tool chest. It's really small because I wanted it to fit in the back of my hatchback. And it comes apart and all this kind of stuff. So it's really small. And then basically I said, here's the largest plane I need to fit in this sucker. And I designed it around that plane, which was a jack plane. So, not that long. So, but yeah, I did some squirrely stuff with gluing cross grain. It's still holding together.
Yeah.
Hadn't had anything split on me or anything like that. So.
One of the first things I built when I got started up again was I built a Dutch tool chest because Chris had been doing his anarchist tool chests, and they were just so big.
Yeah,
I couldn't imagine ever having enough tools to fill it. I now have
it's a lot of tools.
I now have 4 tool chests, by the way. But they're all small and manageable.
Yeah.
If they were all together, though.
Yeah, if they were all together, I could fill an anarchist chest.
Sure.
But when I was a kid growing up in my father's workshop in the basement, he had a Diston handsaw, probably 26 inch, I forget. And I said, well, it's a tool chest. I want to put this in. So I redesigned my Dutch tool chest to be long enough to hold the saw. And so that was the defining length on the tool chest. And it worked really well. It held everything. The only problem is that the span, if I want to pick it up by the handles, I don't have very long arms. And it's just at the edge of my wingspan to be able to pick it up.
Gotcha. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh, hey, you just needed another couple inches. Oh, that's interesting. Well, so Ron, tell me about the type of furniture and the styles of furniture that inspires you or influences what you make.
The furniture I make, I mean, I always used to say I like shaker.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But the reality is I just like things that tend to be simple with straight lines and very little, if any, adornment. So if you look at like the chests that Peter Folensby builds,
Mm-hmm.
if you get rid of all the carving, I love them. You know, and so I've built some frame and panel chests. I built a chair that was, you know what a Jimmy Possum chair is?
Yes.
It's a Tasmanian chair.
Right.
The piece that goes to the arm runs through the seat and is contiguous with the leg. It's all one piece.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at that and I said, that's a pretty cool idea. So I designed a chair that the front post for the arm runs diagonally down through the seat and becomes the back leg. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then for the back of it, I thought that the Gibson chair was pretty cool. So with the W and everything. So the rest of the arms and the back are designed like a Gibson. So it's kind of an immoral marriage between Jimmy Possum and Gibson. And
yeah,
it's and you know, I do stuff like that because half of it is, well, this is cool and this is cool, let me put them together. And the other half is, well, I really want to try making this and I really want to try making that. So let me find a piece of furniture that I can make. The problem I run into is while I'm working on one piece of furniture, I get 3 or 4 or 6 ideas for the next piece of furniture. By the time I finish it, it's usually whatever the last piece in my mind was. So the chair that I'm building now, I had 3 other chairs that I decided I wanted to build. And this was the last one I had come up with.
Understood. Yes. Well, now do you usually have, now you have these ideas, but are you working on more than one project at a time, or do you do kind of one at a time?
Originally, my shop was in the single car part of our garage.
Mm-hmm.
And so my workbench was 5 feet long because that was the space I had. And most of the space was taken up by the table saw and storage of stuff for around the house. So I could only work on one project at a time. As a matter of fact, I would have lumber stacked down the length of the center of the garage, and I would be climbing and working, taking something off my bench and setting it on the lumber and then taking something else. My wife very generously told me about a year ago I could move into the 2-car garage. So I now actually have probably like 350 square feet of garage.
Mm-hmm.
And I have 2 workbenches in there, and I actually have space. So while I was working on the toy chest, my niece had moved and in the process had lost the legs to her ottoman. And they weren't just round legs that screw in the bottom. It was crossed in the middle and the legs went up the sides. And so I was working on that while I was working on the tool chest. While I was working on the toy chest.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time I work on one thing at a time because working full time, I was lucky to get, a couple of evenings in the shop or on a day off or on a weekend. So a project would take me 4 months, 6 months. So to work on 2 at a time, it wouldn't have happened. It would have slowed everything down.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I think that's one of the interesting things about being a hand tool woodworker is you don't need as much space as, a power tool woodworker does.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My shop is about 350 square feet, and I measured it the other day, or maybe it was 450. Yeah. The space I actually use is about 150 square feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
I've got the 5-foot bench, and I've got an 8-foot bench, and then I've got two tool chests in there. But if you go down one wall, it's lumber storage. If you go down the other wall, it's the hot water heater and a storage cabinet and the table saw. And then the other one is a couple of shelves that hold plumbing stuff and electrical stuff and all the stuff that gets used around the house.
Yeah.
So there is not actually a lot of space that I need or use for my woodwork.
Yeah, understood. And the one question I have about your shop is it doesn't look like you have AC in there.
I don't. It sucks at times.
Oh
In South
man.
Florida, man.
Shocking.
I thought about putting AC in it, and I
Yeah.
actually thought about coming up with a way to put a wall in behind the garage door. Part of the problem is I really like being able to look outside and see what's going on and hear the sounds from the street and
Mhm.
get the natural light and everything. So if I were to put AC in, I would have to work with the garage door closed, and it's a dungeon. I mean, it's it's 3 cinder block walls in a garage door,
Mm-hmm.
and it's depressing. So
Yeah.
I open the door in the summer. I run a fan. I'm thinking about putting a swamp cooler in next year.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, basically just run the fan over ice
Yeah.
to pull the
Yep.
humidity out and cool it down a little bit.
Yep.
But I make do, and I just sweat a lot, and I stop every 10 minutes and drink, half a bottle of water or something, or half a jug of water or whatever. And I don't last as long as I probably could otherwise if I had AC.
Hey,
Yep.
hot yoga is still a real popular thing.
That's
you
right.
basically just got your own workout regimen right there with you.
Exactly. And, when you're sitting there squaring wood by hand, that's a whole exercise program in itself.
For sure.
You betcha.
Wow. That's
My
something else.
doctor once told me I needed to exercise more. I said, come over to my shop. I'll show you exercise.
Yeah, I'll show you exercise.
Well, fantastic. Well, so tell us about some of the woodworking education that you've done. You mentioned you took a class with Jamil and Frank. Have you done anything else?
I've taken about four classes at Kate's.
Mm-hmm.
I took the Frank one. I took another joinery class with Andy Gibson, who works there full time.
Mm-hmm.
I took Jamil's class, and I'm pretty sure I took something else, although it escapes me at the moment.
Okay.
When I was up in Maryland and I was turning, I took a class with I think his name is David Ellsworth.
Oh yes, I've heard of him.
He was up in Pennsylvania. He was close to where I lived, so I went up there and turned some bowls with him.
Yeah, he has all the tools now. The
Yeah.
Ellsworth chisels and gouges and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, he's pretty phenomenal turner.
I still have his bowl gouge sitting up on the shelf in one of the cabinets, and it's not being used, but it's up there. And if I ever turn again, I will. I'll use it. But,
Well, so you're not turning your legs?
no,
No.
I foursquare them. I octagonalize them with the hand plane. If I'm tapering them, I taper them with the hand plane. In a cradle against a planing stop.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then the tricky part is the tenon at the top.
Right.
Because I tend to use the Veritas taper tenon tool and reamer, and I still haven't come up with a way that I'm very satisfied with the way the top of it looks, because you need to extend your the tenoner, the taper extends about half an inch past the cutting blade. So you need to clean out more, and then figuring out what to do with that transition becomes a little tricky.
Yeah.
So,
That's true.
If you taper the entire leg, you can taper right up to it and be done.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't like the way that looked on one chair, so I remade the legs.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what Chris does on those. It's been a minute since I've paid attention to what he does on the octagonal legs when he finishes them up at the top. But yeah, it's kind of a weird transition.
Yeah.
Put it simply, as far as trying to get something that works and looks good. And yeah, so
I mean, I found the best thing I found so far is on the chair I just made. I was very careful to kind of keep the tenoner just so it tenoned right to the edge of the hole on the seat side.
Mhm.
So the hole on the seat side was as small as possible.
right.
But that left a huge amount of visible ugliness under the seat. So I ended up reaming out deeper so that I could bring the ugliness as close to the seat as possible. And therefore, it's just not as visible.
Yeah.
So if you crawl under the seat or flip it upside down, you'll see it. But
Yeah, most people are going to do that. Yeah, I think I remember he puts like a cove or something like that
mhm.
at that junction. But yeah, it's still kind of kind of interesting, especially if you're dealing with it where where it's a lot. It's a large diameter right there where the tenon comes in. Yeah, that makes it a little anyway. Oh, that's why I like Windsors. Okay. Oh, so sometimes no, I like the stick chairs. It's just sometimes in getting those right, I've probably made a few staked chairs and stuff like that, and I made one with the octagonal legs, and then I've made like 3 others, and I just turned the legs because I like to look better, but that's me. So it is what it is.
The lathe I have isn't long enough to turn chair legs.
So. Yeah. Well, yeah, mine's barely long enough. I had to put an extension bed on mine, and then there's one chair I want to make that even has longer ones. So I'm like, well, I can't make that chair till I buy a bigger lathe. So there you go, justification for a bigger lathe.
So buy some drill bits from Kyle.
Yeah, exactly. So I can afford. Yeah. Well, anyway, while we were talking, I just got to order for more drill bits. I'm about to run out of 5/8 drill bits. I got to order some more. I think I'm down to 1 left. So anyway, I probably should edit that out of this because
it'll be gone by then.
It'll be gone by the time this posts, probably at the rate drill bits have been going. So yeah, that's a good problem to have. Well, so what are you looking forward to building in the future? You said you had about 3 or 4 different designs playing out in your head with this chair. So are you going to build a chair next or something else?
To be honest, it'll be whatever catches my fancy when I finish this chair.
Okay.
But I have 2 chairs right now. I saw a Sligo chair, which is a chair with this weird seat, and it's got triangular holes in it.
I'm not familiar with that.
It's got one piece up the middle, and then diagonals from the back center to a cross piece in the front, where all 3 of those mount into. And it just looks really cool. I can't imagine that it's comfortable, but it looks cool.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. When we're talking, I just looked that up. Yeah, that is pretty cool looking. It kind of reminds me of that is kind of interesting looking.
And
where does it come from?
It's England, Great Britain area.
Okay.
So, I don't know if it's Wales or Ireland or.
Yeah, the thing I'm looking here, it says our Irish chair.
Yeah.
But
so
this, this website I'm on is from the National Museum of Ireland. So I guess it is of Irish origin. Yeah, that is pretty cool.
The mortise and tenon or half lap joint, I haven't figured out which, where the diagonals meet the front, where they meet in the back, because of all the angles. It looks like an interesting problem.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's plans for it out there, but that takes half the fun out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I will put a link to this in the show notes. That is pretty cool looking chair. It's not a stick chair, but it has some similarities in some respects. It's a 3-legged chair, but yeah, that is pretty cool. Oh, thanks for mentioning that. That's very interesting. Well, so before we finish up here, tell us a little bit about your pursuits outside of woodworking. What do you like to do?
To be honest, for the last 5 years, I've only had time for woodworking and work.
That's perfectly acceptable.
I have a grandson I love to spend time with who comes out into my shop, and he's used planes, he's used hammers, he's just turned 4, but he's been coming out for about 1.5 years.
Okay.
And half the time he doesn't use the tools the way that they're supposed to be used.
Right.
But he touches them, and as he gets older, he's been learning more and more. And my daughter-in-law and my son tolerate the fact that I let him out there with sharp tools. When my kids were growing up, they would come into the shop, and a lot of guys I know, when they have a shop, especially with power tools, when they had kids, they would put a lock on the shop, like a catch too high for the kids to reach or something.
Right.
I didn't. I just started teaching them how to use tools. So they all learned how to use the drill press and how to use a bandsaw. No one used a table saw. None of them were allowed to touch the table saw.
Yeah.
But they also used a lathe, and they all ended up with one black thumbnail at some point or another. But they learned an important lesson along the way.
A rite of passage. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it all started out with as 4 hands, and then it went to 3, and then it went to me just looking, and then it went to, what are you doing over there? That tool doesn't sound right.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll do that with my grandson, although it'll be much more hand tools.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, at least you don't have them sorting your hardware or something like that.
No.
Or pushing a broom or whatever.
No.
No.
And then I cook. Especially now. I just kind of rearranged my work schedule, so I'm going to have hopefully a couple more days off during the week. And I on days off I would cook before, so I assume I'm going to cook more. I made beef stew tonight and mashed potatoes. It was delicious.
Oh, that sounds good. That sounds really good. Yes. Well, cool. Well, let's move on to our patron shout out. So, Sean, who do we have to thank this week?
Yeah, we always like to give a big shout out to our Patreon supporters, and today we're giving a big shout out to some guy named Ron Guritzky. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of this one.
Never.
Nah, I hadn't heard of him.
Yeah. Seems like a nice guy, nice enough. Might make a few mistakes here and there, but Ron, thank you for your support. And I don't mean to say that directly to you, but I am.
You're welcome.
That's awesome. It's rare that we get to have a Patreon supporter directly on the show, so you're one of one, buddy. And if you, dear listener, would like to join Ron in supporting us, throw us a few shekels. You can do that by going to patreon.com/MWA podcast.
Yes. And thanks so much, Ron. You didn't have to, but we do appreciate it.
No, it actually just lit a fire under my butt, and it was something I was meaning to do. So
Good.
Awesome, buddy. Thank you so much.
Well, let's move on to our fortnightly beer choices. And I'll start us off with something boring like water. Someone overserved me a couple of nights ago, so I'm on the water thing. But anyway, and I don't know who it was that overserved me, but I didn't go anywhere. But
a bartender named Kyle.
It was the missus.
You got to watch out for those self-service bars.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, they say all you can drink, and whatever. Anyway, well, Brian, what are you sipping on tonight?
You guys are gonna make me feel bad.
Actually, I'm drinking a single malt Scotch.
Oh, okay. There you go.
There you go.
What's your favorite? What's your go-to brand?
Well, tonight it's Glenmorangie.
Nice.
I am. This was actually a birthday present from last year someone gave me. And I'm finishing it tonight. I'm actually partial to Islay scotches and Speysides. If you can taste the dirt in it, it's better.
I like that.
More peat.
More peat.
Awesome.
That's dirt as far as I know.
Yeah.
All right. I'll go. So my neighbor left this in my fridge. They had some neighbors over for dinner the other night. It's called Reciprocal by Bissell Brothers Brewing out of Portland, Maine. It's a double dry hopped IPA. It's tasty. I like this.
Yeah, sounds good.
This is a good fridge leftover fridge beer.
Wow.
I've never heard of this. Yeah, I've never heard of this brewery before, but it definitely, if you have access to that, I would pick one up.
Not part of the floor cleaning enterprise.
Yeah, the different Bissell company.
Yeah. Well, maybe what do you do with the water if you're done?
Yeah. Oh boy.
Strain it through some cheesecloth, and then you got a good beer here.
The black sheep.
Or it's their spot remover.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Spot remover.
There you go.
Exactly. Sean, how about you?
So I'm also on the water tonight. Just trying out this dry January. We'll see how long it lasts, but water is good for you. So stay hydrated, everyone.
Fantastic. Well, so Ron, where can folks find you on the interwebs?
I'm on Instagram, Obst Woodworker, OOPS Woodworker. The first time I listened to the show, I heard Brian's Instagram and I got very confused. I had to listen to it 3 times.
Yeah, I get that a lot. And I always have to spell my last name has 4 letters, and I have to spell it all the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it kind of sounds like oops if you say it too fast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was my problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just OBST, and then I stop, and there's always like a pause, like there should be more. So
Yeah, nope, that's it. That's all it is.
Yeah. All right. So let's do some reviews. we're going to kind of catch up on a couple shows here as far as feedback. So regarding episode 535, which was the special Christmas episode, for, kind of rounding out 2024. We mentioned Shay Alexander's name earlier in the show, and he says, "Oh, I don't remember this conversation at all," with a laughing emoji. So, yeah.
Careful what you say around Kyle.
That's right.
Yeah. That was a little conversation we had between episodes about some of the machinery that he has in his shop and some of his thoughts on some of that machinery. So it was pretty entertaining. Yeah. And we also had Frank Strauss and Philip Morley on that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always think we should create a Patreon tier where they get to hear this from the minute we hit record to the minute we shut it off, because there's some pretty interesting stuff after the show. And so
we might get sued though.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, you have to sign a waiver.
Yeah. Big waiver. All right. Also regarding episode 535 from Benjamin Allen Furniture, he says, looking forward to listening to this. What an all-star lineup. And we do agree with that. Moving to the next episode is episode 533, which is
previous episode, I think.
Yeah. Sorry. Yep. You guys are being technical, man. So episode 533, which is the prequel to 535. This is when Silver River Chairs came back, part 2. This episode here, I think was pretty popular from what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Jonathan Prometheus mentioned, "Whoa, I know what I'm listening to next." And then our friend Copper John Woodworks gave us 1, 2, 3 heart emojis. So if you would like to leave us feedback, you can do it just about anywhere. We'll find it. You can leave it on the MWA podcast Instagram, iTunes reviews, our individual Instagrams. We will be happy to record the feedback and let you know.
And that just about wraps it up for this show. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show on the podcatcher of your choice. Just search for the Modern Woodworkers Association. And while you're there, please leave us a review. You can follow us on Instagram at MWA_podcast. And if you'd like to support the podcast, go over to patreon.com/MWA podcast. But the best thing you can do is tell a friend. Word of mouth goes a long way in sharing our discussion.